Zeus would transform himself into anything to get a lay.
Yep.
Anything to get a lay.
Right.
He transformed himself into a bull. He
A bull,
transformed himself
a
into a
woman.
swan. He
A little
transformed himself.
bird on here is
Bird.
windowsill. Yes, he
Yeah.
Whatever it
So,
takes.
Whatever it takes. And in a way, that's what's really kind of funny too, because we have this dichotomy in astrology. We talk about like supportive and challenging aspects, and we talk about the benefics versus the malefics. But the truth is, Jupiter can go in there and can create just as much damage as Pluto.
good.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to StarSound Speaks. This is episode 309, Irliana Samsara, StarSound Astrology. We are going to be doing an outrageous teaching on Jupiter and Gemini, and who better, my dear, wonderful fellow astrologers, Michael Bartlett and Alex Trenoweth are joining us. Hey, guys. So Alex is joining us from the UK, and Michael is in Santa Fe. Of course, it's Jupiter, right? We're covering the world. So in this podcast, we're going to be talking about all facets of this major, major transit. As we know, it's one of the biggest transits of the year when Jupiter changes signs. So we're going to be talking many facets and dimensions of it. But before we get started with all that, let's have you guys introduce yourselves. Who would like? Alex is a school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, who would like to go first? Alex, raise your hand.
I got the moon in Leo, so I should go first. Sorry, Michael.
So
I'm a moon in Scorpio.
Moon in
I'd
Scorpio.
rather go later.
So I'm Alex Snows. My specialism in astrology, because when you study astrology for a long time, eventually you develop a specialism. It's astrology and education. So I am a real school teacher. I was teaching all day today. And I get really excited about when Jupiter changes signs because we teach our children by year group. So we can have, Jupiter and Gemini students and Jupiter alongside Taurus students as well. And what does that mean? And how can we prepare our students? So if you're going to have a baby this year, or someone's going to have a baby this year, they're going to have Jupiter and Gemini. If you have an 11 or 12-year-old child, they're going to have their Jupiter return. If you're around 23, 24, you're also going to have your second Jupiter return. So Jupiter, every 12 years, you have the return. So it's a big thing to have a Jupiter return. And I'm sure we're going to be talking a bit more about breaking things down.
Tell us your background.
The MA in cultural astronomy and astrology. It nearly finished me off, but I did it. It was one of the best things I've ever done. I've written 2 books. One is Mirror Mirror, about the astrology of famous people. And I did another book in 2013 about astrology and education, particularly astrology in adolescence, called Growing Pains. So when you talk to astrologers, I think it's pretty important, especially as we come into Jupiter and Gemini, that you get an idea of their background and experience.
Yes.
How long have you been studying astrology? I can tell you I've been studying astrology for 40 years. I'm never going to know everything. And I know this is true. And I think that if you get an astrologer who starts acting like they know everything, you can kind of put some flags up and say, actually, you got a lot of studying to do. So,
speaking of Jupiter, right?
Jupiter and Gemini.
Conversation to be having,
Let's
right?
call up your accreditations and let's see what they are. And great time to learn more.
Right. I think if this big banner is like, this is the year of beginner's mind. Michael, how about you? Let's hear about your I love your books. I have both of them.
Yay, thanks. My name is Michael Bartlett, Master Metaphysical Astrologer. I've written the 2 books, Astrological Mavericks, You Have What It Takes to Change the World, where I talk about people who have planets on the angles, like these 2 beautiful ladies here we're speaking to today, and the power of the angles and how they play out. And then Astro Theater, a revolutionary approach to the ancient art of astrology, showing astrology in a visual manner. I really love Jupiter, of course. I'm a Sag rising. I just had my 5th return.
No, you're not that old. No.
I'm 59, so I had mine a little early, I guess, but so I'm Jupiter in Taurus, so I'm really sad to see Jupiter leave Taurus, although, it's nice because it'll be really great when it moves into Gemini, trining that Pluto, and I think actually, in a way, heralding what we can expect when Uranus joins.
That's what I was thinking.
And then I think we're going to have a real...
It's like a little preview for next.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think then we're going to end up with like, I think we're going to really see a true information age happening.
Yeah,
And that Uranus joins in there and then trining that Pluto, because it's all the air sign, which is, we're going to be talking about that with the great mutation that happened. And this is just another, what do you call it? Link in the chain, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, why don't we, I feel like we should start there where we are right now, Jupiter in late degrees Taurus. Why don't we start there? What is it like, Jupiter in Taurus, and then the shift from fixed Earth to mutable air? Who would like to go first?
Oh, let me in there, because
right,
okay, so we got Jupiter in Taurus, which Taurus is like the most stubborn sign, right? It is
dense.
in its
dense. That's a good way to put it. Solid.
Solid,
yeah.
Not moving. That's what fixed means, not moving.
Think of the mud.
But also it's to do with finances.
Yes.
And I think that what, my advice to people would be, just looking at things on this sort of mundane level is, have a good look at your finances, because we've all had money worries this past year, right? We've all been stressing out about money. But when we move into Jupiter and Gemini, now we got a different focus. Now it's all going to be about information. How quick can we get this information? But also, I think with Jupiter and Gemini, it's also about the truth. What is the truth and what is rumor? And Jupiter and Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is the only god who can go to heaven and go to hell. Right? He passes on messages between those two realms, and we got to be careful about Go ahead, Michael. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, and he also is able to hang out with us Earthlings too. He's the triple threat in a way, right?
He's the triple threat, right? And triple three. But
remember,
three is the magical three.
Its only function is to deliver messages. It's not to teach. It's nothing to do with learning something. It's to do with
dissemination,
spreading information. But Jupiter is about teaching, and it is about learning. And so we got these two gods coming together through Jupiter and Gemini, the sign, and Jupiter itself.
So the interesting thing too is when we think about the mutable signs, I love the tie-in that Alex just did with Mercury, because of course Mercury rules Gemini, but Mercury and Jupiter are the only rulers of the mutable signs. So that inherently kind of brings in this kind of really nice, and I always think about mutability as being responsible. It's response able. It's response able, because it's like, it's able, whatever is presented. For me, I'm a Sag rising, and I find like people who tend to have mutable rising signs tend to be almost like instant responders for things. When you pop in and someone says, "Hey, I need you to da 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 da," and you just like, before you know it, that person's already down the road and they're already doing it for you. That's kind of like, to me, like a mutable, because it's that Jupiter Mercury aspect, and so it really does that. It's also this overwhelm of information that can come in through as well, right?
Right.
Yep. And as a teacher, what I found about the mutable signs, and so this will be my third time teaching. I've been a teacher that long, teaching Jupiter and Gemini. But what I found with teaching Jupiter and mutable signs is you would think, oh, they're a gift to education because they're ruled by either Mercury or Jupiter. And actually what I found out is they're very touchy about their progress. And they're not like the cardinal signs who love to compete, or the fixed signs who love to collect. They are the intellectuals who are extremely sensitive. Does this person know more than me? So they're doing that constant backwards and forward stuff. And, I always tread very carefully with the Jupiter mutable signs.
That's a really good point, because we think, it's because, and especially actually earlier on, you were talking about it really perfectly, is that I think during this time, we really do have to be careful about what our words are. And I think they're the ones, because they're living, what's beautiful about astrology is each of us are living those archetypes. And when you think about like putting a planet, you're moving it out of fixed Earth where it's just solid, like I'm in the garden, I'm enjoying the sun, I'm eating worms, whatever. And then all of a sudden you're like foisted into a classroom, activity, noises, sounds, interactions, and it's like, busy. Yeah, and so it's like, it's very, there's a cacophony to it, right?
Yeah, and especially if you do teach the mutable signs, they're Jupiter and mutable signs, that is, you do get this cacophony of It is information overload. And what I found with teaching Jupiter and Gemini students, so just to remind you, those would be 11 to 12-year-olds having their Jupiter return. And if you're expecting a child, your child is likely to have Jupiter and Gemini. What I found with Jupiter and Gemini students is they polarize too. So you get the really super speedy learners, you get everything really quickly. It doesn't matter what lesson you're teaching, because you can have one student who's really good at math, but not so good at English. They have different weaknesses. But then you also get those students who don't quite get it, and they're nervous about, I'm going to look stupid in front of my peers. And so what did they do? They start talking. And of course, then you get the teachers coming in and saying, don't talk. So I find as a teacher that group work or paired work works really well with the mutable signs, but it has to be managed. You can't let them talk to each other all the time. They do have to get used to exam conditions. And with just this little bit of information, as a teacher, I found that you can tailor your lessons to help those students, whatever sign of Jupiter they have. You can get information for them that's going to help them with this particular lesson. So I think Jupiter really, really helps teachers focus in on what's important.
Beautiful.
In the learning style.
All right, so I'd like to maybe delve into that a little bit later about what you think this might look like for the education system. I think it's time for me to pull up the Ingress chart. We're dealing with this lovely little stellium here, and we've got the Sun in Gemini and Venus in Gemini and Jupiter all conjunct. As soon as it enters there, it's already trining Pluto in Aquarius.
And that Neptune is really actually right there at the world point, acting as a sextile between the two, even though it's still in a water sign. I would kind of give it's kind of giving that realm. So, I think this is actually really a beautiful chart. I like that they're in relationship to one another. I think anyone who's Aquarius or Gemini or even Libra energy, it'd be a great day for launching something. This is a really nicely supportive chart, lots of expansion, lots of, the ideas, a lot of opportunities for ideas and questioning. And with that Pluto down there retrograde is, what needs to be transformed? How is it that we're speaking and going about? Because you have the two benefics, Venus and Jupiter in Gemini. Venus is the esoteric ruler of Gemini. So it brings in a unification that is really quite lovely. So, getting clear about relationship, which I think has been such a big theme. I don't know about you all, but in my clients and in my life and everyone I've been talking to, and especially with all the Venus-Uranus squares that went on the last few months, people are really up to, what are right, healthy relationships? Who do I want to be connected to? Who, are these people really my friends, or are they just appearing to be my friend?
Right.
And how do you define a friendship? Is it somebody that you meet on social media? Is it someone you have coffee with? And I think this is also a lesson that I've learned over this past year with Jupiter going through Taurus in that fixed sign. In that here, this is the reality. This is me in the real world. Having a cup of tea with my friend after a pandemic. This is me having a good dinner, not just a fast food kebab on the way home from the pub, but actually having a proper dinner. And when Jupiter was in Taurus, they're still in Taurus, but over this past year, that is the one thing that I really focused on, was making sure that, okay, we're going to have dinner, we're going to have a nice dinner. Michael, you and I were in Denmark, and I really appreciated this about you and Pia. Pia is Michael's sister. Is that we actually made time all during Jupiter and Taurus to enjoy our food and to sit down and talk. And you're going to be doing a lot of sitting down and talking with Jupiter and Gemini too, but it's a different vibe altogether. Jupiter and Taurus is about appreciating finer things in life. Jupiter and Gemini is about talking about lots of different things, and having that opportunity just to speak your mind.
I have to say, I'm going to miss that about Jupiter and Taurus, because we're in the Zoom era now. I would prefer to sit with someone in person and eat with them rather than have tea over Zoom. It's kind of, it's sad. It just bothers me. But maybe the challenge here is, how do we bring that that rich connection, earthy Taurus connection, how do we roll that forward into this new transit, into the next year? That'll be
And that's really the goal with each time. I mean, it's funny because we have this kind of interesting way that we look at it here in astrology, is that we go, oh, it's moving into this new sign, and like now, everything that's gone before ceases to exist in a certain way. But these are all developmental processes. As these planets go through each of the signs and move forward, it's a developmental process for us as a collective, for each of us individually, for the planet. I mean, there's so many ways in which each of these, each time we, Alex brought up really well, those of you expecting to have a child, or a 12-year-old, or a 24-year-old, or a 36, or a 48, and then a year either side, on the way up to 60, all the way up beyond. It keeps going on. It doesn't stop. But each time you go around, you're bringing this greater awareness. So yeah, what can we bring in? What did we learn? Like, okay, now instead of sitting in a cool, cold classroom in Gemini, maybe we're like, hey, you know what? I want to bring in some rugs. I want to bring in my favorite tea, so bringing that in and including it, because the truth is the way that we do the beauty in Gemini, if we think about it, is if we can bring that Taurian understanding of the pleasures of life forward into that next level of interacting. Oh my God, that's what all of us who love traveling in the Mediterranean, to be honest, or in Scandinavia. I mean, certain countries are just known for it. Business is conducted over food. You do things with food. You do, it's central. It's understanding, it's life force, and that sharing and that loving that isn't just about the ideas. But I think the truth is that the belly isn't full. If you don't feel your feet fully on the ground, you can't allow the information in. You, Alex, as a teacher, this is an issue so big in the States, with so many children who are in poverty or suffering from homelessness, and they aren't getting the food and they aren't getting the nutrition they need. So they're in survival mode. You can't allow any information in when your stomach's grumbling so hard that you can't hear anything.
Yeah.
Just to just say what we're doing here in England. I think we're pretty hot on making sure that children have fruit. On Tuesday, because it's a bank holiday here, instead of getting a normal fruit delivery, we actually had to have biscuits, cookies, instead of the fruit. And the children were like, biscuits? We can't eat biscuits. It's too much sugar. So they really are aware.
Wow.
That's how far we've come in England. Now, I can't talk about the States or any other country.
And as long as our food is being run by mono corporations that are seeking to take advantage of people and not giving them the nutrients they need, I don't see anything changing here in the United States. Every once in a while, they do these food programs, like where they've gone in and they've taken off all the sodas and drinks and made like real healthy choices, and they've shown the difference in the kids and everything. But it's not, what do you call it, across the board. It's experiments that are done. It's like, some states are better at understanding that, hey, this is our future. Why do we not want to invest everything we have into our future? I don't have any kids, but I want my money to go to pay to have good schools, because when I get ready to die, I want someone who knows what the hell they're doing to take care of me.
I think maybe one good thing that can come out of this is with Uranus with that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction having just happened, it's this wake-up call of, like, the kids were saying, hey, wait a minute, that's the sugar, and there was an awareness there that hadn't been there before. And the true Uranian fashion is that there's this awakening around food, and what are we doing, what are we not doing? And so I feel that one good thing about it moving, and now I feel better, okay, that it moves into Gemini, is to spread this awareness. So it'll keep that ball rolling. And Michael, I love what you said about, or I forget which one you said, bringing cookies into the classroom. Yeah, like bring that out. Yeah, bring that dark.
Oh yeah. Oh no, as far as like sharing your favorite things with people. Yeah.
Right. Like as it goes into this next immutable air, is like take that dark chocolate, or healthy dark chocolate, and take the luscious fruits and healthy food and bring it into the class. Like, you don't have to put up with the sterility of an air sign. You can roll over that food and then speak and connect, like the Europeans are always so good about that. They have these late night suppers and they debate and they talk about philosophy and art, and it's over food. So yeah, that we can bring that forward. Okay, thank you guys. I feel better about that.
Yeah.
All right.
I just looked up Jamie Oliver. I don't know how well you know Jamie Oliver in the States. He's
Sure.
a British cook, but he
Oh,
was
right.
very instrumental in changing the way we feed British children. And I just pulled it up. He's born
I
in
think you did a
20.
documentary about him, some in Netflix or something.
He's on a Jupiter return.
Ah, so
How perfect.
we'll be hearing more of the Jamie Oliver
I
vibe.
hope so. He did
I hope
great
so.
work. He did great
Yeah,
work.
Really wonderful.
and getting more of that information out to the masses, how important this is.
Right.
So,
But you know, in that sense, the true information age, and we think about with Pluto in Aquarius, we think of the Jupiter and the Jupiter there in Gemini, and then and then Uranus will get in there. I think the biggest thing is going to be really about discrimination. Like, what is the truth? Is this especially with the AI driven stuff and the false things that we can't even looking at it now? I think we're gonna have to really be careful. There's gonna be some way that we're gonna have to know somewhere. And I think this is where, I don't know about you all though too, like I know within my practice, I really work with people really owning and being aware of their sensitivities and not disagreeing with them. And I think that's one thing with Gemini. I think of Gemini as this aspect almost like an antenna, right? All the air signs are all dual, and meaning that there's a way that they're receiving things. It's like something that has to do with the self and something that has to do with the other. And there's this regulation that has to go in that harmonizing of the two.
Sounds cool.
I like that idea of Gemini being the antenna because if you know any Gemini suns, they are really good at knowing what's going on, all over the place. Or even Gemini moons or Gemini ascendants, they're really good at understanding like the general feel of the playground.
The general feel of the playground, right?
I want to play with that one. I want to kick that one. That one might kiss me.
About that one. I'm going
right.
to, I'm going to take that one's trainers and hide them in another locker. I'm going to.
Right.
All right, everybody. Okay, let's translate.
Sorry.
In the UK, a trainer is different words.
Tennis shoes.
Okay, that's right.
Sneakers.
Shoes. Oh, yeah.
Sneakers.
Yeah.
My trainers. My sweater is my jumper. It's Jupiter and Gemini. We have to learn these different languages, right?
You got to be dual language. Yeah. So
dual.
if you haven't picked up, just to let you know, I'm an American living in London, and I've been here for 35 years, so my vocabulary is very British.
Oh, goodness.
I do get stuck sometimes on
that's okay.
Certain words. Cool. So just let me explain. Trainers, they're tennis shoes.
Trainers. So I'm moving on here. I'm just feeling one of the implications about this Jupiter's ingress in Gemini. I think about the Jupiter, the archetype of Zeus. And I know you did a talk, and can people buy this talk at Kepler, the Zeus on the Loose? I love that title. Brilliant title, Alex. Zeus on the Loose, because you did a talk about this.
I did. So you can buy the it's not called Zeus on the Loose. That's my next book.
Oh, it's in this book.
Don't steal the title, anybody.
No. Copyright.
Go in there and do the ISBN for it right now.
Right.
That's the other thing is, people are so into stealing other people's material. I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm so tired of seeing my stuff copied and pasted somewhere else.
Right. Now the law is going to go after people in Gemini.
I hope so.
It's the highest form of compliment, right?
Right.
Well, if they're making money and I'm not, it's not
right. That's not right.
A good deal.
Yeah,
no,
it's not fair.
Right.
And so, just in case people are not familiar, that part of the Gemini archetype is Mercury, ruled by Mercury. Mercury rules thieves and stealing, the trickster.
It's a slippery tongue, and when you think about what did Mercury do while he was still in the cradle? He took Apollo's cows and he walked them backwards. I mean, it is a trickster, and Gemini has that kind of an element to it of that trickster thing, and Jupiter. I mean, Jupiter is very mercurial in his own right. I mean, I love that Zeus. That's such a great title with it, because Zeus would, if you think of Gemini, and I think of also Virgo in a certain sense, there's this shape-shifting quality. Actually, I think all four of the mutable signs have an element of it, and when we think about them all being ruled by Jupiter and or Mercury, Zeus would transform himself into anything to get a lay.
Yep.
anything to get a lay.
Right.
He transformed himself into a bull. He
A bull,
transformed himself into a
woman,
swan. He
A little
transformed himself.
bird on here is
bird.
windowsill. Yes, he
Yeah.
Whatever it
So
takes.
whatever it takes. And in a way, that's what's really kind of funny too, because we have this dichotomy in astrology. We talk about like supportive and challenging aspects, and we talk about the benefics versus the malefics. But the truth is, Jupiter can go in there and can create just as much damage as Pluto.
good. I'm glad you said that, because often, and you could check this out for yourself. In fact, I would encourage you, if you would like to look at, now, calm down, everybody. Don't get too excited, in death charts, because it's the transition between the earthly realm to the heavenly realm. So I did not say if you get a Jupiter transit, you're going to die. I did not say that. I just said, look at some death charts and see how that works.
It makes sense because, this body is so tight and so small for our soul, and Jupiter is about expansion. I like to think of also Jupiter as being a hot air balloon that will actually get as big as it needs to get for you to pay attention.
And then Saturn comes along and squeezes that.
Squeeze it, right.
But also I want to say something too that I learned a long time ago, and I think it really bears repeating when it comes to Jupiter. A lot of people, again, like to say it's a benefic. Jupiter increases whatever's there. So one of the examples I have is a dear friend of mine came and had a reading. She had I can't even tell you how many Jupiter transits were going on and progressions. At the end of and I told her, I said, most of the time I would say this is really good, but the truth is this, if there's something bad going on for you, this is going to amplify whatever that is.
Yep.
At the end of the reading, she tells me she has stage 4 cancer. And that, we have to remember that, and it still tears me up but we have to remember that Jupiter, cancer is like one of the most Jupiterian things on the planet.
Because it grows, right?
Keeps expanding.
Because it's the sweet stuff, the sugary stuff, the stuff that we love to eat, that actually, and the stuff, and if you think about the counterbalance, the Saturn, the stuff we don't like to eat, the green vegetables
We need to eat.
we need to eat, and the Brussels sprouts, which I hate. All this stuff gives us the vitamins.
Yep.
Vitamins.
That
we need
Thanks for translating that for us.
that we need to have to make our bodies strong.
Yeah, so I was going to say the shadow aspects. Yes, Jupiter is a gas pedal, whether for good or bad or difficult or whatever. It exacerbates anything that's there. One of the things that was coming to me is the shadow aspects of Jupiter and Gemini. When you think of Jupiter, it can be arrogance, spiritual arrogance, inflated entitlement,
Putting on weight.
And also what I love, when you think about the Vedic Hindu name for Jupiter is Guru.
Guru. Yep.
Right.
So, it's so perfect. Jupiter and Gemini, yes, come to me and let me dispense my wisdom to you, but don't pay attention. Like my father used to say, do as I say, not as I do. That's Gemini, right?
But I think, Michael, just coming back a little bit to the Mercury, Jupiter and Gemini, I don't think really has the wisdom. It's repeating things that it's heard along the line.
Good point. That's a really good point. Yeah.
I don't mean to, I know.
No, that's really great, because it's kind of like it would be like you'd be getting, there's a benefit for aggrandizing the story, right? That's Jupiter and Gemini, right? So we don't really care whether the story's right or true. It's just a good story.
We have the information.
The regurgitation.
We could tell it to a party over good food that we learned in Jupiter and Taurus.
Right.
I think that what we got to learn, worry about guru-itis is when Jupiter is in Sagittarius.
Yes, of course.
However, if you were born with Jupiter in Sagittarius or Jupiter in any of the mutable signs, Jupiter and Gemini will be coming into a hard aspect. And so you're going to be affected by it. So don't think just because, I know Jupiter and Gemini, I'm not going to be affected by false news. You are. If you have mutable signs, it's going to hit you somehow.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially more directly to Sagittarius, because it's an opposition, whereas the squares are like, wait a minute, was that true? Is that true? I'm not sure if it's true. Right. The question that comes out.
Right. The summer with August 19th is when Jupiter will be exactly square a retrograde Saturn. And so that's going to be a loud point. And December 24th, Merry Christmas, everyone. Also in June of next year, 2025, it'll make those 3 squares with Jupiter will make 3 squares with Saturn. So yeah, what is the truth? It's about Saturn in Pisces. Is like, there's a lot of tension there.
And this, I mean, and to be honest, what's really great about this is because what we're kind of all talking around too is the great mutation that started with Jupiter and Saturn conjunct in an air sign in Aquarius, starting out this.
And it hadn't happened on and you have to study Kepler's thing about when a planet, when Jupiter and Saturn are in air signs, it doesn't happen again for the 600 years. So you get this grand mutation. I hope that's the right word.
Yep.
The last time it happened was during the Crusades, which was to do with religion, of course. So, you know, I had great hopes for the educational system changing in 2000 when Jupiter and Saturn were conjunct in Aquarius, because 800 years before, or 600 years before, I can't remember which number it is, I thought, okay, well, we had astrology in the major universities back then. We might get it again, you know, this time around. But it's a different kind of transmutation with the pandemic, and, you know, the educational system is in dire straits, really. Yeah. I think, you know, it's going to have a knock-on effect. You know, maybe people don't want to have babies anymore because they don't get the free babysitting anymore. We just don't know.
I know.
But the pandemic had a huge effect on the educational system, and we're still, as a teacher, I'm telling you, we're still recovering from it.
Gemini affects the issue with education. And when we think about it as a third house element, it is, you know, especially elementary school.
Yep.
I was reading about chronic absence. Since the pandemic, the rate of chronic absence has increased. It's something like 30%.
That's significant.
Yeah.
Well, how about this? The children that were 7 years old in the pandemic, that's when we teach them how to tell time on an analog clock. They can't tell time on an analog clock. They would now be 11 and 12 years old. So we see these huge learning gaps. And when we came back from the pandemic, I hate to, you know, I'm sorry to say this, we could tell which children were just allowed to play on their phones and which parents actually engaged with their child's education. And I really believe that there are lots of children who did learn things they would not have learned in school. I have students who learned Japanese, for example, during the pandemic. I have students who learned astrology during the pandemic. And now they're back to learning algebra, and they're not happy about it. They want to do their own thing. They're more independent. So I do think that there is this element that we haven't, it's like we try to get back to the old way of doing things when really everyone's moved on.
Maybe that's a really shift when Uranus goes in there, because I mean, as we know, there's always some sort of an evolutionary aspect of something that happens when Uranus moves into a sign. And Gemini is definitely information, definitely education, the way we communicate with one another, how we even communicate with one another.
As the eternal optimist here, I would like to say that Jupiter in Gemini, the benefit and blessing is that the educational system can at least forced to look at things in a different way. And if the kids did find Japanese and astrology and like allowing them to explore, Gemini, I think of the kid who gets his hands dirty and everything, you know, oh, I'm going to try painting and I'm going to try this and I'm going to try that. And to encourage that and somehow write that or create that into new curriculums that have more open-mindedness.
The truth is, having that way of teaching and learning doesn't work anymore. How do we incorporate it with the phones and the iPads in a way that works, and then add an experiential element? I mean, because Gemini, I mean, the air and fire signs like to have fun. It's like, how do we bring play in it, especially with Jupiter and then Sagittarius? Like, how do we bring fun into it? I always thought like the way of learning is if we could learn through singing songs. Because you think about how well we can memorize songs. Like if we can remember ideas in that same kind of way, if we could access that same kind, and that's Geminian, right?
Mm-hmm. I would have said it's Taurian because of the throat, right?
Oh,
the singing.
But I find most singers have a Gemini aspect to it, though, for whatever reason, or especially when the planets.
The lungs, you have to have good lungs to sing.
Okay,
right.
Okay,
and they're right next to one another.
Yeah, and just for the people that are new to astrology, adjacent signs. I mean, you would think that opposing signs are opposite. Actually, the adjacent signs next to each other are different.
In
So
a-
what that's why we make a big fuss about when there's an ingress, because we got the fixed earth sign and Jupiter in a fixed earth sign going into a mutable air sign. You can't get anything more different than that. And that's why we jump up and down when there's an ingress, especially with the
Yeah, because
solar.
when you think about it, it's like that Taurus is like this bundled up little thing that's been like cared for and taken care of, and then it's getting thrown out of the skyscraper window.
Well, that's
I mean,
true.
that's kind of like, I mean, if you want to talk like kind of, I mean, because I really think it's kind of fun to really bring up like what you just said, Alex, is like, because it is a very different experience. It's not stationary. It's not of earth. It wants to move and it is of air.
Mhm. And it's going to change and change and change again. For Jupiter in that sign it's advantageous because if you think of the shadow side of Jupiter is like that can be very heavy-handed morality, like this is the way it should be. Perhaps like say the education system or even in the guru, the spiritual communities, it's this breaking away and this mutable sign, right? Mutable dissolution of things having to be a certain way and breaking that down and this arrogance and entitlement that it has to be this way or should be this way. And it's like, no, the Mercury ruled, Gemini is saying, no, you've got to explore. It's time. We cannot hold this kind of moral superiority even about this way it should be.
And the shadow for
Heaven and hell.
Gemini, Jupiter, I would say is manipulation, especially informational manipulation.
Yeah, and it's a little, excuse me, guys, I'm just grabbing my back battery thing. Yeah, and as soon as it hits at the end of the month, when it hits that trine with Pluto, boy, you talk about manipulation of information, AI, deep fakes, all of that stuff.
Obsession.
Yep,
Look at how we're
obsession.
obsessed with baby reindeer and a stalker, and she's on Pierce Morgan and stuff like that today. I mean, we're already seeing these little shifts that are coming in.
I would like to bring in the LGBT community at this point. Great stuff, thank you, about the education, but I can also see this about the justice system, transportation. But LGBT, Michael, it's been so heartbreaking for all of us to see this backlash that has been happening. But then there are peaks. There are these joyous little shafts of light that show up. The other day, it said the United Methodist Church, which is like the largest mainline Protestant church in the United States, they finally came to peace about the LGBT allowing them in their congregation because it had split. People were leaving and whole congregations were starting. You think about the Great Schism, that happened in centuries past. It was that same understanding of breaking off, and so it was
Capricorn.
Yeah, exactly. And now I feel I feel that this is going to be a good thing for the LGBT community with Jupiter, the ingress into Gemini. Maybe there'll be more understanding or a willingness to try on. I mean, think about Jupiter, Zeus, the concept of him being in Gemini is like he's getting off his tribunal. The wise King Solomon stepping out behind that judge's bench and putting on peasant's clothes and a little hat, shape-shifting into a youth or a peasant, and then he's going out into the streets and he's mingling with the peasants and the locals and the masses. And it's like he's trying on, what is it like to rule when how is it in their world?
Right. I would say the link up that strikes me immediately when you say that is that that's kind of what a lot of us gay people have been doing. If we're men, we try and act like we're straight men. If we're women, try and act like we're straight women, donning the guise of whatever it is so people will accept us or do it. But I don't know. I think it's very interesting with what's going on because there's a specialness that's happening in society that is taking away from individuals. I mean, I think astrology teaches, especially as Aquarians, that I'm special, but you're special too, is really kind of like the bottom line for it. But I think what's happening a lot of times is their specialness is getting in the way of other people's specialness. And people also don't like change. And when we talk about Jupiter into Gemini, I mean, it's going from that fixed, determined way of looking at things and then going into like, hey, maybe we don't want to be restricted in this way. Maybe we don't want to have things so tied up. Maybe maybe it would be fine to try a different sexual position, or maybe it would be fun to try a different sex. Maybe that's what Jupiter will bring in for us, is we can have a dialogue again and not be afraid to have a different opinion. Oh my God, the PC-ness of everything has gotten so ridiculous that it prevents us from really having genuine conversations. And I know from the conversations I'm having with friends and people on a close basis, this is really up for a lot of people, but there doesn't seem to be an allowance of or a permission for communicating about that, having the foibles of like, I don't understand this. Can you explain it to me? Or why do you look at it this way? It's just, it's so defended. And maybe, and that is like a very Taurian trait. And that is very much in a way Pluto and Capricorn in a sense. So, maybe Pluto with, Pluto and Aquarius, Jupiter going into Gemini, we can start having some communications and be able to go like, hey, the truth is we're one big happy family. When I think about back in the past, what I love about it is that there was a way in each community that there was room for everyone. It's like nowadays it's like, oh, he's a liar, we don't like him. But back in the day, it's like, oh, he's a liar, we know that we kind of have to take what he says with a grain of salt. Nowadays, like, oh, that person cheated on that person, da da da. And it's like back in the days, like, oh, that person is a little more sexually fluid, and you kind of probably have to keep an eye on your husband when she's around or when he's around, that kind of thing. But there was this understanding and communication. And now we just, most of us live in apartments, most of us live behind walls with our fencing and everything. And we're communicating this way, doing, on this, which is another kind of an energetic wall. And like what you said in the beginning, like, hey, you know what, let's break bread together. The truth is we all eat. The truth is we all breathe air. The truth is we need love.
Have sex with somebody, we don't have to, go that intimate. We can have these,
like Whoopi Goldberg's statement. I loved it when, gay marriage came in, because I'm sure like after the abortion thing, I'm sure gay marriage is going to be up for grabs with the US Supreme Court. But it's like, oh, if you don't believe in gay marriage, don't marry one. Like, if like, why people think this idea of like that if I limit another person's freedom, that somehow keeps me safe. But it's like you limiting another person's freedom limits your own freedom. And that's Jupiter and Sagittarius, right? It's like, let me be. How do I get to be? And this goes back to the educational system. If we're all raised properly, if our parents are actually taking the time, spending and interacting, teaching us the social cues that are necessary, not relying on schools to be the sole way of training our children. It takes the whole thing, as Alex, I see your face like that. Yeah. It's like everyone needs it. It's a village. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to raise all of us up. And we need to be talking to one another about it. We need to be finding ways of making it okay and not denigrating and cancel culture and all these other things that are just like, when you think about it, it's really not any different than what we went through in high school. It's just like these popular kids still trying to make themselves popular at the expense of other people. Everyone can be popular. I support all my clients. If I see astrological things in them, I support them to be an astrologer. I support everyone to be their most amazing self. We need to get back to that kind of a time again. And that's my soapbox.
Love it. And I think that is the absolute, you just summed up the whole premise and potential of Jupiter in Gemini. Like, let's take that Taurian, let's take our homemade bread and our dark chocolate and our always healthy
carrot cake, banana bread,
and the what?
Homegrown tomatoes, yeah.
Yeah, our homegrown produce, and we'll sit and have a picnic on the ground and invite that other person over, and that is maybe of a different political stripe, and find that commonality.
Maybe what we should call this, Ingress, is let's have a conversation.
Let's have a conversation.
Let's have a conversation.
Over food.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Over food.
I mean, Gemini ruled on that. Gemini, Mercury is ruled by Mercury in the personality, but ruled by Venus. Venus loves good food, bring out the tablecloth, put out the good china, put out the crystal, put out the silver.
Yeah, because
something gets broken. Oh, well, we enjoyed it.
Right.
it doesn't, I mean, that's the other thing is like, we're in this time now where all these things that people have inherited over the years are in cupboards, like, oh, we can't use it as a special. No, use it. Cause otherwise it's sitting there in the cupboard. It never gets enjoyed. And then no one even understands how to entertain anymore. Or like, wow, wouldn't it be nice to have like a nice setting for dinner, or anything like that. Now, a lot of people are just using paper. I'm sorry if you do this, I apologize, but using paper plates because it's just easier. But it's like, that's part of the joy of living, having the beauty around you and celebrating it and putting on something for someone.
You know what I
Porcelain.
loved about India is that
Yeah.
they give you food on leaves and you eat with your hands. There's no throwaway stuff.
And especially with the ingress chart showing the sun, Venus, Jupiter all conjunct, it's saying, yes, let's be friends. And we have different opinions and stripes. The sun giving the vital life force essential to our souls and the nourishing of ourselves to do this. So
let's party like it's 1999. That's what that little configuration says.
right. It was 1989 was one in 89, and then in 2000 to 2001, and 2012 to 2013 was the last one, Jupiter and Gemini.
Can I tell you about my experience of teaching Jupiter and Leo students today?
Jupiter and Leo.
I know when we talk about Jupiter and Gemini, but something to say about teaching in your groups is that you get your groups that are really like they go with the flow and stuff like that. You get a fixed fire sign. You get a different story altogether. So our 11, 12-year-olds are going to have Jupiter and Gemini because that's what they were born with, right? So they have the Jupiter going all the way around. So we're going to have them starting secondary school pretty soon. But then you get your Jupiter and Leo students. Now, in this particular year group, Jupiter was in Leo all the way through the academic year, which is quite unusual. Usually it changes sign in the springtime. Yeah. So we're going to have a very interesting year group with Jupiter and Leo, children born in 2014 or 15. So watch out for that too, a couple years' time. And what we were talking about with the Jupiter in Taurus, with the good food, the Jupiter Gemini, the good conversation with Cancer, you're going to go back to that thing about the clans and the family and the home things from home.
Nurturing.
Taking care of other people, the nurturing. That's going to come into effect. We got 1 year for that. That'll come. So I think for new astrologers, just think about it as a cycle. That it's not a one-off.
Do you want to
thing.
continue on from that, Ariana? Do you want that for the recording as far as Jupiter going through what each of the kind of the themes is for each Jupiter through each of the signs?
Yeah, why don't we do that now? Where is this going to land in your chart, Gemini risings? What would you say? First house, expansion.
Expansion sometimes physically, but
right.
also intellectually. It may be that you are into a situation where people are listening to what you have to say more. They're listening to your teachings a bit more. And so, if I had Jupiter in my first house, which I will do, one of the things I will be doing is thinking about writing new books, getting my information out there a little bit more. Second house is to do with finances, your own personal wealth, what you find important. So if you got Jupiter in transiting through the second house, it's about your self-worth. What is important to you? What is not important to you? These are questions you're going to be asking. Third house, those are our siblings. It's our local neighborhood, our local community. What can we do to bring us together? What kind of communication can we do? Fourth house, our home. Our home might become this place where we meet together to talk about the issues going around us. Fifth house, the house of a Leo, the speculation house. We might want to take some risks. We might become involved with working with children. Sixth house, our health. Now, this is where I think Jupiter can be really awkward because Jupiter can lead us to be overindulgent, overdoing it. So we got to be careful that we're not eating too much rich food or putting too much strain on our internal organs. Seventh house, dodgy relationships. How about that? Getting married too soon, finding ourselves involved with somebody who really isn't suitable for us, but just because the situation fitted our schedule, we squeeze in somebody who's not really good for us. Eighth house, other people's money. Hey, might be a good time to sign an agreement of some sort to work with other people. Ninth house, take another class. Go back to school, travel. change religion. That's 9th house. 10th house is about our career. Isn't it time you got a promotion? Shouldn't you be looking towards expanding yourself and your skills? 11th house, your friends. Work on Facebook. Work on the social media. Expand that way. And 12th house, hey, take a breather. Take it all in. Do some meditation. Learn how to breathe properly. I think this is really important when you got 12th house stuff going on. You don't need to push yourself. You just need to bring it all in. Heal. Rest. It can be really hard, especially if you have a lot of fire signs. It can be really hard to do that, but you do need that time to bring it all in.
Beautiful. Thank you.
How's that?
That was awesome. We didn't, Michael and I like, whoa, she's on a roll.
Yep.
I told you I
Let her
could.
roll. Yep.
Right.
She's a professional. Do not attempt this at home.
He's the school teacher. Do not interrupt the teacher. Put
Right,
your
exactly.
hand
Sit down, be quiet, and do your work.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of that when Jupiter moves into Gemini. There's going to be a lot of, because that's another aspect, right? It's like sometimes it's just too much. And it's just like.
What you got to do with Jupiter and Gemini is you really have to partition. This is the time to talk. This is the time to be quiet. And you really got to make that partition very clear. And also, being a mutable sign, you got to keep those seating plans rolling, moving around. And I find what works really well with the mutable signs is the carousel kind of learning. You have different stations set up around the classroom. 6 or 4 works well. So you get a group that works in one activity and another works in a different activity, and you rotate them around. That's carousel learning. So you really appeal to that mutable energy. However, you also have to teach them how to be patient and how to stick with one thing. So when you have that kind of lesson, when you're analyzing stuff, which Jupiter and Gemini does not like to do, you need to get those teaching assistants involved in, okay, so I got this table over here who does not like to do analytical work. So you're going to have to help them choose the right words, use a thesaurus, find the right thing to do. And if you can bear that in mind, you're going to have a good lesson. The way I teach, it's not just about giving Jupiter in whatever sign it's in its own way. It's about getting the right support at the right time.
The right support in the right time. And just listening for our own personal transformation.
Just an awareness that we all learn differently at different paces, and we can be unafraid to ask questions, unafraid to say, oh, you understand this better than I do. Can you help me with this? And I'm hoping that this is the kind of culture we have. With the issues you were talking about, Michael, I'm hoping that maybe people were afraid to ask questions because they didn't want to upset people. But now with Jupiter and Gemini, I'm hoping that people will feel a little bit freer to say, I know what you're saying, but can you just tell me how I can help or how I can facilitate that conversation in my classroom, in the grocery store, or wherever? How can I understand it better?
Right. I mean, I always think of it too as like the actual Zodiac, like the symbols, like, so how far are you going to get talking with a bull?
I love it.
Do you think you're going to be able to talk a bull into doing anything? You can talk the twins maybe into, you might be able to talk one of the twins into something, right? It's kind of this interesting thing. We have to really kind of think about the archetypes for what each of them are. And it's like, my thing is always with Taurus, like, put down the food, put it down in front of them and step backwards while you're still facing them. Right. And give them a couple of ideas, plates of ideas in front of them. And then they'll come up with like, oh, I came up with a great idea.
That Taurus only going to raise the questions. How do you talk to a crab? How do you talk to a lion? How do you talk to a virgin?
Exactly.
How do you talk to the scales or to a scorpion or to a centaur?
But it's true for each of them. I mean, and they really are. I mean, you talk to, I mean, like I was talking with my Cancer friends the other day, and it's like, yeah, when you talk to Cancer, you just have to know that they're just going to move to the left and they're going to move to the right. And as they're doing that, they're kind of bringing in the information, but they're not going to be direct about it.
And they might be a little fussy or crabby.
Yeah. And a lion, have you ever tried to talk to a lion? They're pretty good at roaring back to you, regardless of what you say to them.
I'm a Jupiter in Cancer person, and not only am I in Jupiter Cancer, but it's also on its exalted degree. So Jupiter in Cancer is very strong in me, and I always found Jupiter in Cancer year groups very challenging, and it's because they're so worried about everybody else, and also I see their weaknesses in me, so I have to be very careful of my Jupiter in Cancer students who would now be in year 3. Just be careful that I'm not projecting onto them. It's a challenge.
That's
I
such a great understanding. That's a really great understanding with that.
With astrologers, I think this is self-understanding is really important, and this is where you do the work. The guru work is not just about giving out information or whatever. It's also about that self-understanding and an awareness, I think, of different learning styles and different needs.
And the ability to see something in a different way.
Yeah. So more fingers crossed for Jupiter and Gemini that we can get that flexibility.
Yes, totally.
I think we're ready for it.
Wow. We certainly covered a lot of bases today, and I'm very, very grateful for both of you. I think it's been.
Are we your first couple?
Yes, you are the first triad. Yes. Well, of course, it had to be a couple. It was Jupiter and Gemini. It just had to be.
You were forced to multiply.
Oh, what fun this has been. This has been great fun. And
yeah.
It's good for us that, astrologers, that we get a chance to. Astrologers tend to work by themselves. We tend to I can't talk about astrology with my teacher friends, right? I can't talk about astrology. It just tend to be quite isolating. So it's good for us to meet together, bounce ideas off of each other. In true Jupiter and Gemini fashion.
Right. Excellent.
Let's communicate. Let's have a confab. So how do people find you, Alex?
Yes. How do people find you?
Well, I mean, you got to spell my name properly. Alex Trenoweth. AlexTrenoweth.co.uk is my website.
And I have it below in the comments section.
And you can contact me. I don't use fake names. You get the real deal with Alex Trenoweth. I don't have any handles.
It's the real deal. All right.
Just spell my name.
The link is below. And Michael.
Michael, I'm available at michael@coremichael.com or coremichael.com, and any of my YouTube stuff. Just started doing a thing with Justin Elsie Crockett where we're called the Relationship Guys, which is really fun. So we did Megan and Harry. It's on YouTube. Take a look at it, see what you think. But I think we're in for, I'm really excited for what astrology is going to be doing over this next period. I'm really excited for the opportunities for astrology. I think the world really needs us.
Excellent.
Yeah. When Mercury, you think about being a significator in astrology, and Jupiter in this sign, I think it's this mass dissemination. I think we'll see a whole nother level of it. And it's what I noticed a big shift when we had the Leo Aquarius eclipses. That's when really it just hit another level. And now I think it's going to just explode. And my desire is where it goes into the education system, just like the old days. Can you imagine if I were a kid in elementary school and the teacher would talk to us about the planets and the archetypes of consciousness that are associated with each one? And I know in my heart is just on fire to have that again, that this astrological renaissance. So yay! We will see you all soon, and please do let us know, what are you looking forward to with Jupiter and Gemini, and we will see you all very, very soon. Thank you so much again. This is Alex Trenoweth, Michael Bartlett, Irliana Samsara saying Bye for now and see you next time. StarSound Speaks, starsoundastrology.com. Namaste.